It's sometimes hard for me to believe that Lynn Singer has other responsibilities and accomplishments beside her responsibilities in the Provost's office, because if you've ever been to the Provost's office, she seems to be working 24/7 on that job. But she also does many other things. Dr. Singer is professor of pediatric psychiatry and general medicine, medical sciences at Case. She is the director of Project GLAD, Growth, Learning, and Development, a 15-year longitudinal study of infants with bronchopulmonary dysplasia and very low birth weight. I hope I got that pronunciation right. And Project Newborn Next Steps, a longitudinal study of cocaine-exposed infants and their mothers, now in its 10th year. She recently received funding from the National Institute on Drug Abuse to direct the first longitudinal study of the effects of prenatal exposure to the drug known as ecstasy on child development, and this is based in London, England. In April 2001, Dr. Singer was appointed Vice Provost for Planning and Assessment at Case Western Reserve University. Several weeks later, she was named Interim Provost and University Vice President as Provost James Wagner assumed the interim presidency after the resignation of President David Austin. As Edward M. Hundert assumed the presidency in August 2002, Dr. Singer became Deputy Provost and Vice President for Academic Programs. She also served as Interim Vice President for Medical Affairs from August 2002 until April 2003, while a search for the Dean of the School of Medicine was in progress. Currently, Dr. Singer serves as Interim Provost and University Vice President. Lynn has published more than 70 abstracts, edited 2 books, and has served as editor for several scholarly research journals. And I'm summarizing here. She has received, for her research, grants totaling almost $19 million. Lynn has a BA in, guess what, French, from Duquesne University, an MED in Learning Disabilities and Behavior Disorders from the University of Pittsburgh, an MA in Psychology, and a PhD in Clinical Psychology, both from Case Western Reserve University. I have been here a little more than a year, and in that time, I've learned a tremendous amount from Lynn Singer. Her administrative ability, her understanding of organizations and people, and her incredible enthusiasm are a sight to behold. She's our fearless leader, always ready to listen, always ready to champion women's equity and advancement on this entire campus and in the area. Her support for the center and belief in its purpose and potential is an inspiration to us all. Lynn.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your kind words. And really, this is a man who has taken this town by storm even before he moved here. It was absolutely fascinating to watch Ed Hundert sort of take on Case Western Reserve University and take on the greater Cleveland community and begin to really build the kind of relationships between the university and the community that are so important in order to make this university what we all hope it to be, the most powerful learning environment in the world, the best university, and our very, very favorite strong research partner and community engagement partner. And so we appreciate very much, Mr. President, your involvement, and keep at it. Now, I get this great opportunity to sort of welcome you to Cleveland, which many of you are totally Clevelanders, so that's not really the right thing. It's really about welcoming you to this dedication ceremony where we really are talking about the Center for Women. And I want to tell you that there are some folks in this audience, Lana Moreski, Nancy Crone, and Susan Toria, have been talking about this for umpty-ump years. And now it's real. And that is an amazing concept. We whenever this happens, and I'm sure, Ellen, as you go around making your speeches various places, you hear people tell stories about what various places and things mean to them, and certainly we're honored to have you here to share your words of wisdom for those of us who read your column. It's always fun to see the people in person. But it is also a time, I think, where we think about why do we need a center for women? Has anything really changed? Now, I can tell you, when I went to the University of Michigan in 1971, we had some challenges at the University of Michigan. There was an HEW lawsuit where they were being sued because they had very few women professors. I was pursuing a history degree. You can see what you do with a history degree. You become mayor, since you can't get a job. But we were trying to create a women's studies program. And of course, I began as a sophomore at the University of Michigan teaching because there was no one who knew anything about women's history. And that was the state of the place. There was an endowed chair for a female to teach European history, which had been vacant for 10 years because they determined there was no woman competent to teach European history. And so you look at all of this and you say, perhaps we have made some progress. Perhaps we have. I also spent last night watching my daughter, who's a junior in high school, compete in the qualifying tournaments as they come to the state tournament in field hockey. And I watched the level of competition, and if anybody knows anything about field hockey, it's a fairly competitive game. It's a running game, and this particular game, the teams were very closely matched. And you play, and then you go into overtime. We did 2 overtimes and finally decided it in a stroke-off. The good news is my team won. But I compared that to when I was at University of Michigan. I played field hockey. It was before Title IX. And the deal was we practiced during the time they served meals at the dorms because the boys had to eat. And so that didn't last really a long time. Now, some of that stuff is really different at a university. But I also tell you that in the broader community, there are still different issues that get raised for women than get raised for men. Many of you watched the campaign that I went through when I was running for mayor. And here it was, straight up 10 candidates, 8 men, 2 women. And the conversation was direct and involved, not behind the scenes, but straight up people would raise their hand and say, that time I was county commissioner, Commissioner Campbell, how could you be mayor? Are you tough enough? And the question was really, you're not acting like a man. And this whole discussion that gets revolved around how do you exhibit leadership and how do you engage people, there's no framework. People spend more time discussing my hair, my outfit, my shoes. It's a stunning thing. Now, I think we now have been 2 years, people have begun to believe that it's okay, but it still is an ongoing process. It is absolutely an ongoing process. And then I have children. So this is the other interesting drama, because I'm sort of the generation that has forged the path of doing both a career and children. So I was in the state legislature. This is a true life story. And I got pregnant. Now, understand, I was married. I wanted to be pregnant. It was my husband. Everything was cool. But I knew that if the Speaker of the House knew I was pregnant, he would never put me on the Finance Committee because he was one of those good old boys from down south. So you can get away with not saying anything for just a certain amount of time. Those of you who've done this, you know how this works. And he was making the committee assignments particularly late that year. And so I'm getting my jackets bigger and bigger, you know. And finally, he makes the appointment. I get on finance, and I tell him that I'm 5.5 months pregnant. And he looks at me and says, "Why didn't you tell me that?" I said, "Because I knew you wouldn't appoint me to finance and he said, "I wouldn't have. You shouldn't work so hard." I said, "Well, you already did, and now you can't take me off." And he didn't. And so I had the child. I got asked the dumbest question ever asked by a news reporter. Now, I'm the first pregnant woman ever to serve in the Ohio legislature. Cameras rolling, 8 months pregnant. Here I am, big as Dallas. Question, Representative Campbell, how did you get pregnant? To which I said the regular way. And the follow-up question was, what do you intend to do with this child? And I said, love it and raise it. And that was it. Now, she is now 16 years old. Since I had my child, I had the first and second children ever born to sitting members of the Ohio General Assembly. Since that time, a member of the General Assembly had twins, and it just keeps on going on. So you can see that there are some different issues that now, when I'm the mayor, there's a conversation, well, what are you going to do about your children? Well, fortunately, my children have a wonderful father. And so they have 2 people to help take care of them. But I also, you know, I told you I went to the game. I scheduled my world so that I could run out and go to the game for 2 hours. Now, they all tease me at the game, all the other parents, because I'm talking on the phone. But it's okay. We can do these things. And that's part of the challenge of a Center for Women, is recognizing that we have stories to tell, we have things to learn, and creating a strong academic environment is one where we not only build on our students and the future, but we build on the community. We engage people. Our Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones, I see Teresa from Stephanie's office, who is a Case alum, we might point out, double time, law school and undergraduate. And we come as public officials to this place. We come to this place because we have hope, we have promise, that you are, as President Hundred said, not only teaching the women what it means to be women and to be strong, but teaching the men how to deal with strong women. Fortunately, Case has brought an extraordinary woman to lead this effort. Dorothy Miller has become a Clevelander in the last year, comes to us. We had this interesting conversation. She came from Wichita, and she said, but I really came from the east, and I'm on my way back east. And I said, you have arrived. We are here. Cleveland is where. Dorothy, come here. Come here, Dorothy. It is my privilege to introduce to you and to present on behalf of the people of the city of Cleveland a proclamation recognizing the opening of the Case Western Reserve Center for Women and its distinguished leader.
If I can have your attention, please. We have a very, very exciting program for a very, very exciting day in the history of this university today. And so I'd love to begin, so as to not shortchange any of our incredible speakers. I'm Edward Hundred, president of the university, and absolutely thrilled to be here for this historic, long-awaited grand opening of our Center for Women. And I want to welcome all of you to this dedication and symposium that is going to be filled with some really exciting discussion and insights. The Center for Women is a truly essential part of the university's vision to create the most powerful learning environment in the world, to try to create this transformational learning environment in which learning doesn't just take place inside classrooms, but takes place in the entire environment around the university, University Circle, the city of Cleveland, the region of Northeast Ohio, and beyond. And I think that the center's active presence in the life of this university is going to make all of us, and that includes men as well as women, better educated, more understanding, more comfortable at a human level with the way that women's issues connect with the lives of every one of us. And I should say on a personal note, and I've said this in other forums, that it was actually getting involved with women's issues among women medical students when I was a faculty member that drew me into academic administration in the first place. There were a number of issues of concern to the women students in the class at Harvard Medical School, and as a junior faculty member in psychiatry, I said we have to address this and started putting together various groups and interventions, and since no good deed goes unpunished, when the dean then wanted to hire a new dean of students for the medical school, asked me to do it, and the next thing I know, I was, an administrator, and the rest, as they say, is history. And this was before I had 3 daughters who have actually further elevated my perspectives despite the handicap of the Y chromosome that about half the population has. And one of the things that I think is most impressive about the launch of the Center for Women and the job that has been done is the comprehensive nature of its programming. That is to say that this is a resource for students, faculty, staff, but also for all these community partnerships that are such a central part of the vision of Case Western Reserve University. And it's very gratifying to see here today so many representatives from other institutions in the region who are partners with us. And there are many, many people that I would love to introduce, and there are too many to name, but there are a couple of people I noticed just sitting here looking out. One is that we have several of our women honorary trustees here today. I see Lainey Haddon is here, and Dorothy Havorka is here. Julie Bolton is the wife of the chairman of our board, Charles Bolton. Leadership from the Flora Stone Mather Alumni Association, Janine Love is here. There's just so much rich history at this university, and one of the things that I have found most exciting in conversations with all of the wonderful alumni of Flora Stone Mather College for Women around the country, which, by the way, has my single favorite award that's given by this university, which is called the Swimpy Award. And the Swimpy Award is the Senior Women in Their Most Productive Years. And the Senior Women in Their Most Productive Years is a cash award. It's very competitive, and it's something that you've always wanted to do. I met one person on the West Coast who was building a boat, and she's actually now completed it, and various projects like that. And it's the sort of thing that these just highly energized women alum just really are inspirational. I remember marching into this room for the reunion with the 50th reunion class, and as I was walking in, there were all these wonderful women, and what were they singing? They were singing this song, "You can tell a girl from Mather, but you can't tell her much." And it was just so much fun and so energizing. And so, one of the things that, as I'm sure universities do when they launch centers, is they launch fundraising campaigns to name the centers. And it's very exciting to say that the leadership of the Flora Stone Mather Alumni Association and the university have launched a plan in which, and we want to be very respective of the governance of the Flora Stone Mather Alumni Association, but to have the board of the Alumni Association at a upcoming meeting agree to put to a vote of the membership of the Alumni Association to make a lead gift and to help raise $5 million for endowment of this program, and to authorize, to seek approval to authorize a first gift of $1 million by the end of this calendar year from the association, that upon receipt of which I hope will be in 2 months, would name this the Flora Stone Mather Center for Women. And to me, that would just be, I think, the way the Flora Stone Mather Alumni Association could get behind this and connect that to the history of the university would just be really inspirational. I think everyone involved is very excited about that possibility and hoping that's what's going to happen. I also should note that there are a number of other distinguished women in the audience, but the one that I was asked to introduce is the first woman mayor of the city of Cleveland, Jane Campbell. And I am really pleased to welcome Mayor Campbell to the stage to greet us. As many of you know, the mayor and I had the great privilege of co-hosting a national symposium here on January 30th called Great Universities and Their Cities, in which we got university presidents and mayors and other civic leaders from 9 cities around the country to come and explore best practices and partnerships between urban universities and cities both in the United States and Canada. And I think everyone who attended that event came to the conclusion that one of the best assets that our city has is the leadership and the partnership that we share. And I think she and I became phone buddies before I even moved here with a whole bunch of issues that were going on. And her leadership, her collaborative spirit, her infectious enthusiasm continue to be a really great source of inspiration for many of the things we do here. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce the mayor of Cleveland, Jane Campbell.
Thank you, Dorothy. And that was a very intimidating introduction. And I'm really thrilled and delighted to be here today. Today's celebration is a very long time in coming for all of the people in this room who've made this day happen. And I know Dorothy, I'm glad she's taking Monday off because she has just been working tirelessly with a large group of people to make this happen, and I thank you for that, Dorothy. We're here today to celebrate the Center for Women and to recognize all the work that's gone into it and all the expectations that we have for it. Let's make sure we understand the shoulders on which this center stands, including the obstacles that have been overcome to get here. We've had this wonderful context this morning, the societal context that we heard from Ellen Goodman, and now we need to learn a little bit about our own history and our own context. The men, and they were men, who were the early leaders of our nation and of our own university, were often given to thoughts about the education of women. But even when they wished to be supportive, they tended to be somewhat narrow-minded. For example, there was much antipathy toward the education of females in colonial America, as the vast majority of citizens questioned whether women should learn to read and write. In New England, even when public schools existed, girls could not attend. Sometimes they were permitted to sit on the steps outside the schoolhouse to eavesdrop. Sometimes they were tolerated by sitting behind a curtain at the rear of the room. Thomas Jefferson, one of our early male leaders, said, "A plan of female education has never been a subject of systematic contemplation with me. It has occupied my attention so far only as the education of my own daughters occasionally required. These, for a female, are dancing, drawing, and music." What was the reason so many were against education for women? For one, it was popularly thought that education would damage women's brains and deter them from doing housework. So, true. Skeptics asked, if all our girls become philosophers, who will darn our stockings and cook the meals? Even one of our own presidents, Charles Twing, whose room we sit in, was of the opinion that college women are inclined to have an undue appreciation of intellectual values and an undue depreciation of ethical values. They overvalue knowledge and undervalue power. And I've been here, it's really interesting hearing today the theme of power and hearing the roar, which brought back to me the times, which I'm showing when I grew up, the times we sang, "I am woman, hear me roar." And I'm so glad that you were roaring today and that we had Ellen Goodman here to help us roar. Victorian physicians warned that brain activity was so exerting that it would cause the reproductive organs to wither. Another reason not to be educated. A popular jingle of the times indicated that the wives preferred by men were those, quote, who never learned the art of schooling. They were untainted with the edge of ruling. Things began to change in the 1800s, and Oberlin College and Antioch became the first colleges to admit women. Although at the same time, Charles Eliot of Harvard contended that women were unable to, quote, bear the nervous strain of collegiate study. Even at Oberlin, women were not considered equal. They were required to keep silent in public and had their papers read aloud in class by the men students. The enrollment of women in our own university was not without issues. We have heroes and we have some villains, and we have some pioneering heroes. Western Reserve College was founded in Hudson in 1826 with the avowed purpose of preparing young men for the ministry. But it stayed a college for men only until 1872, when President Carroll Cutler announced, unexpectedly, that women would be admitted to all the privileges of the college on the same conditions as men. These are the men who were here. In his inaugural address, President Cutler asserted that, quote, if any woman thirsting for knowledge should seek it at this fountain, she should not be refused. And so that was the first time. So we do have some great things in our history. In the next 19 years, 43 women entered the college, and 19 graduated, 8 of whom were elected to Phi Beta Kappa. Cutler's decision, however, was very controversial and was openly opposed by many of the male faculty and students. And I'd love to see our women's studies go into this, because I would love to read the speeches that went on at the faculty and with the president and the board at this time. A yearbook in the 1880s included a poem that predicted, the co-eds come by millions. It makes one's head turn gray to think these heavenly creatures are coming here to stay. Women constituted about 4% of the student body in Hudson College during the 1870s, and around 30% of total enrollment in our Cleveland College during the 1880s. This rapid growth caused some to believe that women would soon take over the institution. In June 1884, the faculty proposed a resolution to the trustees of Adelbert College that women should be denied admission. This resolution was supported by every member of the faculty except President Cutler, who did not even know that the item was on the agenda of the meeting. So I think he needs to go to Diana's class. Cutler made an impassioned plea before the board, noting that men feared that the college would, quote, fail of its end and be wasted on mere women. There is a fear, he said, that all manly spirit would be killed, and that the men may become quiet or even soft and girlish. His opponents wanted Adelbert College to maintain its image as the Yale of the West, an exclusive men's school. In reply, Cutler said, and this really made me proud of Ohio, we need to realize that Ohio is not old Connecticut, and thank God, never became so. It is and will remain Ohio, filled with a new, more progressive, freer spirit. Cutler won the day, and by a vote of 12 to 6, the board denied the faculty petition and continued coeducation. However, the next day, only women were present in classes which were boycotted by the male students. The ladies hung a banner from the window of the main college building reading, "A Delbert Female Seminary." President Cutler may have won the day, but he lost the war. He was ousted over the issue, but not before his own daughter completed her degree and graduated as valedictorian of her class. Continued controversy and conflict over the women's issue led to Cutler's resignation. He was succeeded by President Hiram Hayden. Hayden believed that the presence of girls kept Cleveland men from attending the college. The college was having hard times, and believed that this would continue until the institution was over-feminized. To avoid over-feminization, coeducation had to go. President Hayden invited the women of the college to his home and explained to them very logically that the ouster of women was necessary to achieve the patronage and support of moneyed men and of alumni. Hayden told the women that they would have been better off in a women's college where their special needs, interests, and mentality could be taken into account. Hayden publicly announced the end of coeducation at his inauguration. While Hayden was still speaking, the 4 women who were members of the senior class, 2 of them with the best records in the class, rose from their seats in the front of the auditorium and left, not only the building, but the college, and ultimately received their degrees from Boston University and Oberlin, where they no doubt have endowed multiple chairs by this time. The Cleveland Press at this time wrote, quote, "Once more there is blood on the face of the moon that looks down upon the walls of Adelbert College." By 1888, the trustees of Western Reserve authorized a separate college under the name of the Cleveland College for Young Women. Later, the College for Women, and much later, the Flora Stone Mather College. At the same time, one of the most remarkable patrons the university would ever have was beginning her generous support. Flora Stone Mather's first gift to the university was a donation of $50,000 to create the first professorship in the history at this men's college, known as Adelbert College. Shortly afterwards, however, she began to provide gifts to the College for Women. Some very large, sufficient to pay for new buildings, and others so small they took the form of individual items of furniture or lunches for the women students. In 1931, many years after her death, the name of the College for Women was changed to Flora Stone Mather College. Professor Gladys Haddad of the History Department notes that Florence was significant in many ways, among them her independence as a philanthropist. Most other wealthy women of her day were known for giving gifts in keeping with their husbands' preferences. Mrs. Mather set her own agenda and determined the recipients of her gifts based on her own interests. If you haven't seen the video that Gladys has made, you really must. It's truly inspiring. I mean, feminist doesn't begin to describe Flora. She provided funds for daycare, just really a forerunner of every issue that has come, even to the point that tragically she died of the women's epidemic disease, breast cancer. And I think she's just emblematic of the feminist movement. At her death in 1909, the Cleveland Leader editorialized as follows: "Her wealth made it possible for her bounty to reach far out and accomplish great results. But all the while, those through whom her gifts were distributed felt that the most vital element in her bounty was her lavish spending of herself." We're going to move a bit ahead now. and into a different area because, as you know, we're federated. We've brought together two great institutions over the years. Except for a few years during World War II, coeducation simply did not exist at the undergraduate level at the Case Institute of Technology from its founding in 1880 until 1959, when acting president Kent Smith announced that women would be admitted to the regular undergraduate program the following year. The mood of the time was dominated by what was called an explosion in science and technology. And one exception to this that I'd like to mention with Dorothy here is Frank Havorka, who was very much concerned with the role of women in science at that time. And many students in Western Reserve's Mather College majored in chemistry and went on to successful careers as chemists. In fact, over a number of years in the 1940s and 50s, the then Western Reserve University was in the top 2 or 3 of all universities, including the large state universities, in the number of women majoring in chemistry, and in some years the highest nationally. Frank was an honorary member of the Mather chapter of Iota Sigma Pi, which was a national honorary society for women in chemistry. So another one of the heroes that have helped women, and we have... So it finally seemed to make sense to include women among the young people to be recruited into these fields. To this day, however, it still remains difficult to attract anything approaching a balanced number of men and women into engineering programs. And the culture of these disciplines has shown every bit of as much resistance to women students as the men of Adelbert College displayed back in the 1880s. In 2000, the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers Journal, Technology and Society published a special issue addressing changing perspectives on women in technology. The cover illustration, chosen by the editors to portray the attitudes of some years earlier, says it all. This was thought to be what would happen if women were allowed to enter engineering fields. Of course, they would burn everything. They would be putting lipstick on while their Bunsen burners were exploding, etc. And it's just very amusing in terms of their ideas of how women would influence science. By the early 70s, women's voices were sounding with a persistence and insistence to be heard and acknowledged. Everywhere it was evident that women's issues could not be ignored. In 1971, Professor Tepfer established the President's Advisory Committee on the Status of Women at the University. Patricia Kilpatrick chaired this committee. The report was submitted in January 1973 following intensive research. Significant inequities were found, and the university was requested to show evidence that it was demonstrably promoting professional equity for women. During the same time and into the mid-70s, there was an informal women's center that met in the Spartan Room, right upstairs by our own women's center in the wing. It was generated, organized, and run by students and may have been a club. In the late 80s, 2 events stand out as memorable for women on this campus. In 1987, Pat Kilpatrick was named the first woman vice president at this university, and she's here today. Stand up, Pat. Pat, can you stand up so everyone can see you? This was great news for all women at this university. In 1988, the Flora Stone Mather Association had their centennial celebration of the establishment of education of women at Case Western Reserve University. This superbly organized and splendid day-long symposium focused on the higher education of women yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It was exactly what women on this campus needed. Women were not going to sit back and wait. They became proactive. In 1991, after 30 years, Kathy Karapides, who's now our interim associate provost, stand up, Kathy, presented a follow-up report to the 1971 report on the status of women faculty at the university. Shockingly and ironically, the conclusion was that the situation over those 30 years had actually deteriorated. Women as a percentage of tenured faculty had dropped from 14% to 8%, while men had increased from 61 to 64%. I think this report generated new activism on campus, leading directly to lobbying by a coalition of women's groups on campus for a women's center and for many other advances for women. The Mather alumnae during this time challenged the university with a generous financial gift, which was at first refused for a women's center. They organized under Bert Kelvey, culminating in Women 2000, to raise money for this center. The actualizing connection for this occurred this summer as Bert Kelvey presented Dorothy with the funds to begin programming at the center this summer. So I really believe we have this direct connection between Flora, the Flora Stone Mather alumnae, the activism, the reports that have gone on right in this room to the Women's Center today. So, throughout the history of this university, there have been a series of extraordinary women, a few of whom I've already mentioned, such as Flora Stone Mather. Here are some of them that you should be aware of. Rebecca Perkins Kinsman was born in Connecticut in 1773 and moved to the Western Reserve with her husband John about 1800. She had 9 children, most of whom did not survive their teens. Kinsman, Ohio, and Kinsman Road in Cleveland are named for their family. In the 1830s, when she was a widow in her 60s, she made a gift of about $35,000 to Western Reserve College, which was equal to the entire budget for the college for that year. In gratitude, the trustees of the college gave her and her heirs tuition in perpetuity. Susan Cutler, remember her, the daughter of President Carroll Cutler? She was the first woman student to be enrolled in Western Reserve College, which of itself was enough to cause the faculty and the male students to dislike her. But she was reportedly, allegedly quite rude. There were many complaints by the faculty about her. One faculty member said she used improper language and that she watched him through an opera glass as he lectured. I can't imagine what that did. In the parlance of today's student affairs professional, she graduated as class valedictorian, but not class president. Florence Ellenwood Allen was a 1904 graduate of the College for Women. Her lifelong career as an activist started while she was a student here. She resigned from a Democratic women's group in protest over compulsory military service. She was a leader of the women's suffrage movement, both in Ohio and nationally. She went on to law school and later became the first woman to serve as the chief judge of Federal Circuit Court, the 6th Circuit, based in Cincinnati, on which former law school professor Karen Nelson Moore now serves. Oh, great. Elizabeth Walker, known to all as Libby, is a 1939 alumna of Flora Stone Mather College. After going off to earn a master's in classics and teach for a few years elsewhere, she returned to Mather College and began a 40-year career as a dean and teacher, despite dubbing herself as a spinster. Among her accomplishments during the time was the creation of a contraceptive clinic. And back in the early 1960s, this was quite unusual. Later, she convinced the administration to have formal acceptance of co-ed residence halls. Pat Kilpatrick graduated from Mather College in 1947 with a degree in physical education. She returned in the 1960s as an instructor, soon became assistant dean, where she worked closely with Libby Walker. After a number of years, she joined the university's central administration and in 1987 became vice president and university marshal, the first woman to hold the position. She is currently vice president emerita and also has served as president of the Mather Alumni Association. June Osborne graduated from the University School of Medicine in 1961. After a number of years on the faculty of pediatrics at the University of Wisconsin, she was named Dean of the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan. She's now the president of the Josiah Macy Foundation, which supports improvements in education and training of physicians and other health professionals, with an emphasis on minority physicians. For more than 2 decades, she has been at the leading edge of the effort to understand and manage the international AIDS epidemic. The Honorable Stephanie Tubbs Jones, representing the 11th Congressional District of Ohio in the United States House of Representatives, holds 2 degrees, as you heard from the mayor today, from this university. An undergraduate degree in 1971 and a law degree in 1974. While she was an undergraduate, she was a major figure among the African American students here and led the development of one of our residence halls, Sherman House, as a center for African American student life. She's been an official of the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a prosecutor, and a judge in the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. She also virtually lives on our campus, and her congressional district includes our campus. The last heroine I want to mention could be any one of the thousands of women, students, faculty, and staff members here at the university today. Let me give you just a few numbers to suggest how unusual these women, how unusual we are, and to convey the message that I think we should take with us as we celebrate the opening of this long-awaited and much-needed Center for Women. We attract stellar, excellent undergraduate, graduate, and professional school students from all 50 states and from about 90 other countries, but only 45% of them are women, as opposed to something approaching 60% of students enrolled in all the nearly 4,000 colleges and universities in this country. Despite their small numbers, we win a disproportionate share of academic awards. We have about 2,300 full-time faculty members, and less than 31% of them are women. In this, we're not very different from other major research universities, just different from the entire society in which these universities exist. It's also true that our women faculty are disproportionately clustered in the junior faculty ranks. Again, not that different from other universities of this type, yet they do extremely well. And we have started to make a turnaround from Kathy's report, although we're not where we need to be yet. We have the only 2 active members of our faculty who are also members of the National Academy of Sciences are women, Cynthia Bell and Lynn Landmasser. This year, we also received a $3.5 million National Science Foundation Advance Award. It was led by a small band of energetic women and one man, John Angus, who is part of our advisory board. This is a wonderful picture of Mary Barkley, our professor of chemistry, only tenured professor of chemistry currently in our school. The goals of this grant are to achieve equity, participation, openness, and accountability at the university for all faculty. We have about 3,000 full-time staff members, and in this group, women are in the majority. But once again, they show up most often in low-ranking positions. And once again, this is not terribly different from the experience of other research universities. The message I want us to take away today is that the women on this campus represent a powerful force, far more powerful than our numbers would suggest. Our women students, faculty, and staff, with the support and encouragement of the thousands of women alumni and the members of our governing and advisory boards who are here today, are moving this university forward through their hard work and innovative approaches to teaching, research, and other forms of scholarly engagement. As we make progress toward the goal of equity and full participation of women, we will be able to look back and see that it was all of us, men and women, who will have made it possible for us to get there. The importance of the Center for Women on this campus is that it gives us the chance to start recognizing the important role that women already play here and in the larger society without having to wait to look back. So, thank you.